Today on Pro Church Daily, we're talking about, should your church have a dress code?
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Daily. This is the show where in 10 minutes or less, you're going to get a daily dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift we've seen in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by the boss man, it's Brady Shearer. And today we're asking, should your church have a dress code?
Growing up in a small Baptist church, Alex, all of the leaders always wore a button-down shirt and a tie. When I went to a Pentecostal church in my teen years, lead pastors always in a full suit.
Yep.
And then I went to Bible college, started going to these young and trendy church plants, and people were wearing tanks and baseball hats.
Their jeans were ripped.
Their jeans were so ripped, it was more skin than jean, more flesh. Flesh out, mesh out. And so we wanted to just kind of have a conversation about this idea of dress code for leadership at your church. So this isn't about the idea that everyone who attends a church should be in their Sunday best. We're not talking about that. That's a discussion for another time. This is about, should you have a mandated dress code for your leadership? And we're just going to talk about 4 different considerations to think about when you're making this decision and implementing these rules.
All right.
Now, to start, I want to show you what I have worn on stage at my church the last 4 Sundays that I have been hosting.
And you haven't been excommunicated yet, so
I have
you're
not.
good.
So this first image, for those listening, is me on stage. And to give you some context, my church is about 2,000 people. We run 3 services on a Sunday, so it's a big church, far reach. And I am on stage doing the hosting. So that's announcements, new visitor welcome, giving, transition from worship into announcements, out of announcements into the message.
Okay.
Hosting section. That's what we call it. So this first image is me with a t-shirt and a bomber jacket. So the bomber jacket is a leather jacket on the sleeves. So pretty nice. It's a nice jacket. Wasn't cheap, and it's kind of nice.
There you go.
The second one, we go down a little bit farther. So I've got another t-shirt on. The t-shirt reads 1867, which is the year that Canada became a nation.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing a different jacket this time. It's a jean jacket.
So it's got a few more holes in it.
It's got a lot of rips in it, okay? So every time I wear this, someone in church comes up and says, "Hey, you couldn't afford the whole jacket, bud?"
Yeah.
That's how older Canadians talk when I insultingly imitate them.
Yes.
The third Sunday...
Still going downhill at this
Downhill
point.
again. So no jacket anymore.
No.
Now I'm only wearing a t-shirt. The t-shirt reads Powers, which is really the power of the Holy Spirit.
I like this t-shirt. I don't get it. I don't know.
There's a giant, pelican on the back? What is that?
I don't know.
What's the Fruit Loops bird?
I think it's a toucan.
Sam?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
giant, colorful toucan on the back.
Yeah, it just has powers on the front.
It's a powerful toucan, powerful bird. And the fourth Sunday
You're not
might be
wearing
my
any
favorite.
shirt at all.
I'm shirtless. No. Okay, so I'm still wearing a t-shirt, but I'm also wearing a baseball cap. Ooh. So an Adidas dad cap, curved brim.
Okay.
And so this gives you an example of what we wear at my church.
Okay.
Now, we do have a dress code at my church for those on stage because we do iMag and live streaming because we're a bigger church, and we have camera operators on the floor. So if you are a woman, you can't really wear short shorts or especially a skirt because you've got cameras pointed up that could lead to some dangerous positions.
Right.
So that's about the dress code that we have. But as far as I know, I could walk out in a Raptors jersey, which I have also done before.
Which you will do next week.
By the way, while prepping for this episode, I came across Transformation Church, a really popular church on Instagram, and one of their worship leaders was wearing a Michael Jordan Bulls jersey. Ooh. So I figured, I can still keep pushing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about 4 considerations. Now you know what I wear. You know where I'm coming from. Again, come from different churches that have been very formal. 4 things to consider. The first one is that, we've said this before, sounds a little bit, but okay. Your vibe attracts your tribe. And basically what this means is that if everyone on your stage is young and dresses casual, it's very likely that your congregation will reflect that.
Of course.
We've got a lot of young people in my church, and when they come to church, just as when I come to church and I'm not hosting, I wear the exact same types of clothes.
Yeah.
And they wear clothes that are very similar, young people. So that's the first thing to consider. If you're an older church and you are always wearing a suit and tie, you're likely going to attract certain people that wear suit and tie as well.
We talked about this last week on Pro Church Daily, just about how often your community will reflect your leadership. And last week we weren't talking about dress code, but I think it's that same thing is true, specifically talking about dress code today. I remember when I first started teaching at our church, That was about 6 years ago, and I remember the first time I preached, shirt and tie, because that's how I grew up, a small local Pentecostal church. And now when I teach, I wear whatever I want, like ripped skinny jeans or what have you. And so that's been a 6-year-long progression, transition. And we've actually seen it replicated in the people who do come to our church. So not only newcomers who are coming to our church, but the people who've been to our church for a long time who formerly would have worn suit and tie no longer feel obligated to wear a suit and tie because the people on the stage aren't often wearing that kind of dress anymore. So we've seen that happen. The community reflect the leadership.
Second consideration for you to chew on: when asked to choose from word pairings to describe their vision of the ideal church, millennials, young people, 64% chose the word casual over the word dignified. And so this is just data that you can take for what it is, just a single piece of context, but the majority of younger people prefer a more casual experience than a formal, dressed up one.
Wow, that's a really interesting data point.
Third consideration to talk about: the theological implications of dressing up at church, but not dressing up elsewhere. So what I said was, when I'm on stage, I dress the same on stage as I would right now, doing Pro Church Daily, as I would if I attended church and wasn't serving on stage on that Sunday. I grew up, and it was always taught to me, whether through worship songs or through explicit teaching from the stage, that the auditorium, the sanctuary, the meeting place of the church is holy ground. And as I grew older and my theology changed a bit, it became more of, wait a minute, the church isn't a building where we meet, the church is me, and I'm carrying the Holy Spirit with me wherever I go. And so there's nothing wrong with dressing up on a Sunday morning to go to church, but saying that you have to do it because that's where God is, for me, was theologically inconsistent and lacked depth, and it didn't make full sense to me. So I'm a big proponent of dressing the way that I would normally dress.
Of course.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was actually the reason, the impetus for us kind of transitioning out of wearing suit and tie on a Sunday morning to wearing, normal streetwear, like you said, what we would wear on a Monday. You used the phrase earlier in this episode, our Sunday best. And that's kind of this phrase that the church has adopted. You wear your best clothes. But we were realizing in our community, we were having a lot of new people come to our church, and they didn't have the same kinds of clothes that we did. They didn't have Sunday best. And so they would come into our worship service, maybe with no preconceived idea about what church looks like, sit in this strange room with all these strange people, look up on stage and see someone dressed in a way that, I don't have those kinds of clothes. I don't feel like I fit in here because I don't look like these people. And so we recognized that as an issue, as a barrier point in our community, and said, what if we just dress like everybody else? And like you said, lived as if, we're the temple of the Holy Spirit, and God is inside of me, and he goes with me as I leave this building. What if our ethic was consistent? And we've seen, just great results in our church because of doing that.
Final consideration, one of my closest friends is a pastor's kid, a PK. I'm not one myself, but when he often talks about his dad, unfortunately, he'll talk about the way that dad acted on Sunday versus the way dad acted throughout the week. And he's not the only person. It's more common than we'd want it to be.
Yeah.
And so there's this idea that on Sunday is when I got my preaching voice on, I got my preaching clothes on.
Yeah.
And so this is another thing that came to mind when I was thinking about dress code. And again, we're not here to prescribe anything, because I don't have any absolute thoughts on the rules for this,
right?
Which is why the title of this episode of Pro Church Daily was formed in a question. We just wanted to give you some things to think through.
Of course.
But there's this idea that on Sunday you act one way because it's church, and you also have to dress one way because it's church. And then the rest of the week, you're a different person. And so that's why I dress the way that I do on Sunday, and I don't change the way that I dress, because when I run into people at my church in the supermarket, they don't even know me because our church is big enough where I don't know everyone.
Of course.
And they say, hey, you're Brady from stage. I don't dress completely different. It's just me. I look identical.
Yeah, we talk about pastors and the opportunity we have in this day to use our phones, use social media to keep connecting with our church throughout the week. And I think about Instagram stories. And if I was sharing my life through Instagram stories during the week, and I'm wearing, this on a Monday and this on a Tuesday and this on a Wednesday, people are following me online, and then they show up to church and I'm in like suit and tie. It's like, but wait, like, who's this version of you? Because for the last 6 days, the version of you online I've seen, wearing sweatpants, or in your case, wearing these bright purple Raptor shorts.
Let's go, baby.
Like, this is who I've seen, but now I don't recognize this version of you. And so, yeah, just that consistency, that ethic is super important.
That'll do it for this episode of Pro Church Daily. The featured resource we wanted to highlight for this episode is the Central Hub Strategy. This is a strategy that I've been teaching for close to 5 years now, and we've actually begun to see real results from churches. So we did this case study where a church saw signups boosted by 53% in 1 year. We cataloged that entire journey, how they did it, and we want to share that with you so you can start implementing, see similar results in your church. That featured resource is linked in the show notes for this episode of Pro Church Daily. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Pro Church Daily. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another video.
And while you're subscribing, why don't you go ahead and hit the like button?
Thanks. See you next time. You're a little bit cranky today, bud.
I'm triggered by a lot of things that are happening.
Do you want to talk about it?
Okay, wow.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Pro Church Daily.